What has caused you to become bitter? Being with my company for 8 years, then finding out new people that I trained make more than me. Worked for 7 years at a company with positive annual reviews. One day someone was hired at my same level and same location and was started at 20% over what I currently made. My reaction towards my boss was not of the respectful variety. I walked in my boss's office and asked him why, if I was so poorly viewed by him and the company that I had not been let go, and if he could give me a justification for why I should bother doing anything but come into work and go right to sleep. I quit on the spot while barely letting him get a word out. In hindsight, I probably could have leveraged that into a hood but more money, but at the time blowing up felt better. Attempting to stay in contact with friends and then realizing they wouldn't do the same for you once you stop. I used, and still do, to some extent, to have the mentality of don't make it into a competition. If you care about someone, contact them. And I did. But after 10 times of being the one initiating the conversation, I just wonder if they'd bother to do the same. Each time they say, I've been meaning to call you, and they never do. And I'm talking good friends who share history together. Not someone I met a month ago at the gym. I still love them, of course, but this bugs me and leaves a bitter taste whenever I think of them. Working retail at any corporate store. I started out a young man loving meeting new people and talking to them. After months of daily verbal abuse by shoppers and no backup from your bosses, you just assume everybody is a giant cock and become bitter. I own retail stores. 90% of my customers are angelic trumpeters sent straight from heaven to grace me with their beautiful energy. But that 10% takes more of my day, more of my energy, more of my focus. I have closed one store and can't wait for the lease to be up on the next. I can't deal with it. Even kicking them out or giving firm boundaries, they'll call me up later to yell more or harass me on social media. I recently had one guy who asked for an exchange for an item we tested successfully in the store. He didn't know how to use it, but there are tons of tutorials online. He called. I gave him URLs to some how-tos, and I explained that we don't have that item in stock, so we can't do an exchange, but he can sign up for a class to learn how to use the item. He, after 3 minutes of insisting, says he will come inside the store instead. My employee calls me 15 minutes later, saying there is a guy there insisting on exchanging an item we don't have and says I told him he could. Yeah, no, then he called me again, so mad that even though I said no, I still said no. I can only say no so many times. And yet they still keep at it. I was steamrolled by customers as recently as Monday, and we aren't even open this week till Friday. Expectations. I had these expectations about how life was supposed to go, how I was supposed to be. Life didn't work out that way, and I know it was my own doing by having those expectations, but I'm still bitter about it. I think one of the problems with our society is that we are so inundated with these fairy tales about our worth and potential, and how everything is for a reason or will work out in the end, that we set ourselves up for failure. The truth is none of it is true. People used to be tougher before television and social media. People knew the people in their direct circle. For the most part, they weren't the pinnacles of anything. Nowadays, people compare themselves with the extremes of talent, beauty, and intellect. Most people are not that. So when these winners in life go on TV or SM and talk about, you just have to give it your all, or whatever they chose to spew out of their fortunate mouths, they are talking from a place of success, which most people will not reach. I think this is one of the causes of the increase in the rates of suicide and depression these days. The death of my wife, love of my life, is alive. I cheated on her 15 years ago. She's married now and has a child, but she's not in love. A fake. Sometimes I think it's as painful as if she was dead. I'll do anything for her if we ever get together again, but pretty sure it will not happen. The reason I write this is to tell you that if you did the best you could to make her happy and your life together was good, be proud. You made two human beings happy, and I'm sure she would be happy to see you happy even when she's not around. All best. After realizing that hard work is not fairly rewarded, someone else who is lazier and less competent can get something that you wanted, deserved, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's also about how you present yourself. People are ignorant and lazy. They often don't even notice. It's stupid to expect the others would do the work for you to perfectly recognize what you've done and reward you. You have to make an effort to make them see, and make sure to get what you deserve. Of course, ashamed good people stay overlooked while incompetent, and bad ones play their environment to ascend. But if good competent people did half of what these ones do, they would go much further. I blame the way children are raised, being fed tales of justice and being nice, to just behave and not be an annoyance, which also comes from laziness, so parents and teachers can work with them less. Showing kindness and in turn being treated like a stepping stone for someone's ego. Honestly, it's not nice guys finish last, it should be nice people finish last. You cannot be a genuinely good person and expect to get anywhere in life. You may live a happy life, sure, but you'll be walked all over by other people, by your employer, etc. If that doesn't bother you, then sure, you can be happy, but it bothers most people. As soon as I learned that being kind doesn't help me, I stopped doing it as much. You really do have to learn to be if you want to be successful. And that, folks, is why life is. Because I like being kind. But it has put me in terrible places in life, places I would rather not revisit. Nice people get taken advantage of. That's the way of the modern world. I was the type of person who would go out of their way to do anything for anybody who needed it. Someone needs me to watch their dog. Absolutely. I'd love to, and I'll take great care of it too. Somebody needs picking up from the airport? Sure, absolutely. I'll drive 1.5 hours both ways to come get you. No questions asked. Nothing. Then people get used to this and just start taking advantage of you. Oh, my friend and I are going on a camping trip. You're not invited. Can you watch the dog on this 4-day weekend? Oh, I'm not feeling well today. Can you come get the dog? Can you stop at so-and-so food place on the way over? That sort of crap. I'm a middle manager and I axed 6 to 7 people at the small business where I worked during COVID, and we cut to the bone and overloaded the remaining employees with extra work. I just looked it up and the owners took $315,000 in PP loans and bought luxury cars and boats with it while we laid off pregnant workers and single moms scraping by. I hate that I had a hand in it. For everyone saying report them, nothing would come of it. All you need to do for PPP forgiveness eligibility is to use the funds for rent, business interest payments, or payroll. It's very easy to use this money for those items, then bonus yourself out a few months later, which is how the owners at my company pay themselves. They get a bi-weekly paycheck as employees like the rest of us, then a giant bonus every quarter based on cash flow and a set reserve level. That's why PPP is so bad. It's just free money for shareholders with no legal teeth to make sure it's actually used for its intended purpose. Reporting them is only risk considering. I'm one of maybe 3 to 4 people in the company that sees the whole picture, and 2 of them are the direct beneficiaries of this scam, this corrupt country and capitalism. The unshakable hopelessness that the world is only getting worse and worse. No matter what we do to try and better ourselves financially, we'll be met with some new corporate bullterry that will knock us back down. I'm losing my motivation to keep pressing forward. I just want to retreat into my apartment and do what makes me happy until I die. Working on my master's in education right now, and as much as I want to teach in school, all the horror stories I see all over the place are making me wonder if this is the right choice. It really feels like I'm jumping into a bureaucratic hellhole, but I've invested this much time, money, and energy into this career that I have to see it through. I get pretty bitter when I think about how I've developed a second incurable disability from simply trying to exist with the incurable disability I was born with. I have been largely in diagnosis limbo for several years now, and I'm definitely bitter about it. We have a vague idea of what the problem probably is, but very little certainty. I have weird seizures that have caused me 2 major injuries from falling. I'm losing my vision, probably also to do with my bizarre neurology issues, but it's another thing nobody has been able to pin down. I'm violently allergic to a massive host of things, including smoke. I had to give up my dream of becoming a dog trainer because 75% of the time I leave my house my throat swells shut, and I was so close to being certified. But the thing that made me the most bitter is that last month my best friend, who had a similar host of tie and impossible illnesses, died from COVID complications. My own health issues and high risk kept me from attending her funeral in person. I'm so angry with COVID deniers and anti-vaxxers and the whole world who failed one of the best people the world has ever known. I know logically I shouldn't be, and she wouldn't want me to be so angry, but I am. My ex cheated on me. My job told me a bunch of lies to get me in the door, and now I feel mistreated. Housing is a nightmare, and landlords just take your application money and give the place to someone else. It feels like everybody is just out for themselves, and I can't trust what anyone says. I'm tired. For what it's worth, you aren't alone. I've got a narcissist baby mama who uses me, a boss that uses me as the dog to kick despite me being the only one who seems to know how to do things, while also always being the guy getting things done when not busy cleaning up everyone else's mess. The only thing I have to hold on to is my son when he lays his head on my shoulder and hugs me. Not everyone is out for themselves. I still help others and try to be positive despite my poor circumstances. I hope everything works out for you, bud. People, my theory for the decline of civility is the pending destruction of our world and everything in it. There are fascinating contributors to the prediction of the end of the world, and I look at people's change in behavior similar to that of dogs and cats before an earthquake, or cows lying down before it rains. We understand very little about ourselves or the world around us, so this is a possibility I have reflected on. None of this may be true, of course, like all theories unless proven. You should never get upset or worry about these things, only understand all the possibilities when evaluating a phenomena. Of course, another, more likely explanation is that people can see in plain sight the inequality that has been created by our unbridled capitalist system, and it is that is making them feel the inevitable me first ideal. Growing up in a household with unstable finances, love my parents and everything they did, but the lack of resources really impacted who I grew up into. Took a toll on all my social relationships, family, friends, partners. No matter how much I try, I can't get the money-related anxiety out of my system. There was so much pressure and acceleration, and a huge lack of resources. I didn't starve, but life was a huge burden. Now I'm 31 and I have a good life, more money than my peers after years of hard work and sacrifices. And I can't stop thinking of money. I'd rather die than go poor. Just to imagine a poor and hard life again, I lose my breath. Knowing I'll be working until the day my dies. I won't get to retire and enjoy some years not working. I'm so exhausted with the hustle. Work. As someone who has managed to stay away from being bitter for the past few months, one of the things that seemed to help me was not to focus on the end goals, but just on the process. Instead of waiting for that miracle that'll never happen, just make sure I have a nice evening or a good weekend, and that definitely won't happen every evening or weekend, sometimes just happens. But I try to live for the good moments instead of waiting for the great ones. Somehow it also seems like it pulls the pressure off a little bit, like if I decide to just go for a walk. Because I feel like it, I don't feel like I'm losing time towards a bigger goal anymore, or at least that is how I try to look at it. Years of people stomping my kindness, my loyalty, my trust, and my feelings. Years of people making everything that happens to me sound like it's not a big deal. Years of people demanding my help but never being there for me. I may have let some of it happen, but I didn't deserve to be abused. That's something to be proud of. They chose to take advantage. That's on them. You're not responsible for their actions, but unfortunately you're still responsible for your actions in the face of mistreatment. I hope you continue to choose kindness or simply choose to walk away rather than giving them a taste of their own medicine. This world is desperately in need of kindness. It may not seem like it, but in my experience kindness does come back to you. Maybe not from the same people you were kind to, but it always seems to find a way. Politics. I genuinely struggle to see the good in politicians. All I see is hatred, greed, idiocy, and psychopathic behavior. It drives me insane. If I may, I think the issue is the greater public, at least in countries with democratic elections. I ran for office at a local level, and it was super eye-opening. I actually knew my stuff and was ready to work hard. People would tell me I was too young and too female and just voted for the same old jackasses who they're now complaining about because they're raking in the money and doing nothing. People need to change how they vote and stand up more for their rights. They keep voting in the same terrible politicians and then wondering why the same terrible politicians keep getting voted in. Nothing ever being good enough for my family. I graduated college but didn't get a high enough GPA. I got into a grad school program, but it's too easy and waste of my time. I moved home because my mom wanted me to, but now I'm a freeloader. I offered to pay rent. and I buy my own groceries as well as pay my other bills. The list goes on. If I'll never be good enough, why even try? I grew up getting the same message. Did well in school, but others were better. Got the job they wanted me to have, but did not progress as much in my career as they hoped for. It took me many, many years to change my mindset. If you can't win or get it right for them anyway, it doesn't matter. You will never make them happy or do them proud. So, do what gives you happiness and satisfaction in your life. Experiencing how differently I get treated by people just because I lost weight. I'm a woman and lost about 15 kilograms in 3 months a few years ago because I was severely mentally ill and had no appetite, worked out a lot to try and make my mental health better, and was doing quite a lot of hard drugs. I've always been a bit chubby, but the reaction from everyone was ridiculous. So many women said, "How did you do it?" And I got so frustrated with that comment that I started telling the truth to make them uncomfortable. Men suddenly wanted to have with me, but not much else. Gained it all back anyway. Most diets fail. That our entire society enables and rewards and exclusively benefits the worst, while good people who care about others and do what is expected of them get screwed endlessly. Lying, cheating, stealing, exploitation, misinformation, ignorance, hate, bigotry, greed, corruption, etc. are all rampant right now because that is what works. That is what politicians listen to and what media networks across the board get ratings profit from. Society will endlessly cater and try to appease the idiots and holes, while those who follow the rules and act with empathy and kindness get kicked in the teeth. This is something I came to realize during COVID, and I've been struggling with depression ever since. Struggling with why I should continue giving about anyone but myself when it's never gotten me ahead, or helped me out, or brought me any benefits. Instead, I feel I struggle every single day and have to run just to stand still. I'm an elder millennial living in the Rust Belt of the US. I'd say it's living through once-in-a-lifetime events repeatedly. In the 1980s, it was recession and seeing my parents struggle and not make it, leading to substance use and divorce. I watched Columbine happen in high school. 9/11 was my freshman year of college. Oxy flooded our town and ate at least a third of my graduating Kel. Graduated college into another recession with student loans and could barely find a job. I was just trying to make it and not be like my parents. Got married, tried to buy a home, and the market went crazy. COVID hit just as my kids were old enough to get really ed up by it mentally, and it ed my dad, who worked hard his whole life to not get anywhere. We are finally getting on our feet and inflation is pulling us right back down. So yeah, I'm a little bitter. My mother started my bitterness off young. She's just unbelievable. Good example of her, I'm in college and I had a terrible case of the flu last winter. Had to go stay at her house because I was allergic to Tamiflu, was possibly in need of hospitalization from dehydration, and was too sick to drive, lived alone, had nowhere else to go. She made me pay for every single thing I ate there. My parents are well off. It's not like the 2 bowls of soup and pudding cups made a huge dent and screamed at me for a good 4 hours while I laid in bed sicker than I've ever been, telling me I have always made her want to herself and starve herself, called my best friend and screamed at her, etc. Working in customer service and being cheated on 3 times by 3 different holes didn't help much either. We live in an age of corporate feudalism where we lower to middle-class earners are the serfs and all the millionaires and billionaires are our overlords. They piss on our heads, tell us it's raining, and then virtue signal to make it seem like they are not the bad guys. The system we all live in is only good for rich people, and it's only going to get worse. Us citizens should be literally burning down, but nobody is because wealthy politicians are using hot-button issues like climate change and abortion to divide us. It should not be red versus blue. It should be poor versus rich. The working-class people of this country and the world could literally change everything for the better if we could stop fighting for long enough to see who our actual enemies are. Apologies if this is too long. Rising rent costs, my smiling depression, turning 32 on Saturday and feeling like I should have accomplished more at my age despite having a few photographic jobs and a bachelor's degree. Being unmarried and dateless at 32 with a non-existent dating life, thanks to social autism. Having married, engaged, dating couples shove their happy stories down my throat and seeing all the happy engagement, wedding pictures. Feeling inferior and an imposter compared to everyone else. Having intrusive thoughts that I'm not man enough because I'm not in some blue-collar job, military job, or first responder job, thanks bullying. Being told that my depression and issues don't mean squat because I'm not a military veteran with PTSD, a product of rope, or a product of domestic abuse. I'm trying my hardest to stay afloat, but trust me, I'm a ink train wreck and a shell of my former self. Going through a phase where I tried to be as kind, generous, honest, and open as I could to all people and having all of them use that for their own short-sighted, petty personal gains in a mostly stupid fashion. Growing up watching my liberal democracy become a place wherein people literally, gleefully, fanatically try to actually do real harm for people simply engaging in discourse that they do not like. I don't like people anymore. I don't like society, as a human practice, I mean. I don't mean I don't like my society or Western society. I mean I don't like the human instinct of being a social animal which uses representational language to invent imaginary constructs like identity, ownership, morality, etc. and then do real things to real people due to these imaginary constructs. There's some of it. Where I live, most people walk their dog off-leash in public areas where it isn't allowed. I have a small breed dog that my wife and I adopted back in July. In November, while I was walking my dog on leash, we were attacked by a pit bull that belonged to a houseless man. Noon came to help and I had to pry the Pittsburgh mouth open to get my dog back. It was either that or watch him die. When I took my dog to the vet and told them what happened, the first thing they did was chastise me and lecture me about how everyone deserves to have a dog, while my dog is in my arms bleeding. When I called animal services, it took an hour to get a hold of anyone, and by the time I did, they gave me a similar lecture. Told me there was nothing they could do and recommend that I make a post on Nextdoor if I wanted anything to be done. Well, I reluctantly did, and it was a predictable show of racist comments, victim blaming, etc. The whole incident appended me and my wife's lives for 3 months in thousands of dollars in vet bills and not feeling safe in our own neighborhood. Things have improved since then, and our dog is fine, but I've lost faith in my community and our institutions in a situation that could have been avoided if everyone kept their dogs on leashes. Childhood trauma. My first memories are of asking my mom why my father hated me. I grew up being shouted at, neglected, abused, and assaulted by family and friends. I have post-traumatic stress disorder, and it literally makes me sick to my stomach see happy children and their loving parents. Everyone in my life has failed me or abused me at some point, and now society just expects me to shake all that off and function as a normal adult. I'm disabled and extremely mentally ill, and all I want is to feel loved and cared for, but I'm afraid that will never happen. I see my rich cousins who live in mansions with indoor basketball courts, and I wonder why I was chosen to get the abusive, lazy father who couldn't hold a job for more than a few years, and the insane shell of a woman mother who never had the courage to leave him. I had a miserable adolescence, and now I'll have a miserable adulthood working until my Thai body gives out at 30 or something.